Thank you, Madam Chairman. And you pointed out initially that when Republicans were majority, I was the chairman of this subcommittee, and it is, I've always considered this to be perhaps the most significant one because the readiness is what it's all about. And I see problems that I kind of put back in the perspective of the 1990s when I did chair this, and I see a lot of the problems that are much more serious than they were at that time. Now, I have to say this about these meetings. One of the reasons that I spend so much time actually in Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that is because, I don't mean this personally to you guys, but by the time we get some kind of testimony here with all the media out there, it's kind of, you get kind of rosy in your interpretation as to what we've got. Here's the problem with that. There are a lot of people that I serve with in the United States Senate who don't hold defending America as high as the priority as I do. And for those who are wanting to cut back on the military spending, all they do is point to testimony here. Whoa, they don't have any problems at all. They said everything's fine now. And, you know, I remember back when I was in the Army, we had 9% of GDP was spent on defending America, General Stevenson. And up until the last budget, I believe, before this current administration, it was 4.7% of GDP. I remember when Rumsfeld came in for his first confirmation hearing, I told him that in my last year in the House Armed Services Committee, we had someone testify at that time that in 10 years we'd no longer need ground troops. Are you listening, General Panter? That's what they said. It was back in 1993, 1994. And so I said to Rumsfeld, I said, you're going to have to make determinations as to what you're going to do today to be where we want to be 10 years from now. And you're going to be surrounded by a lot of real smart generals, but they're going to be wrong. And because there's no way in the world you can say what our needs are going to be. Now, the question is this, not a question really, but an observation. If the American people assume we have our kids going into battle have the best of everything, and they don't, and in order to get there, what would your recommendation be? And Rumsfeld responded. He said, well, for the last 100 years, our average percentage of GDP to defend America averaged for 100 years 5.7%. Now it's down to 3.5% with the goal of getting down to 3%. Now, I see that as a problem. And this is a readiness hearing, and we have, when I think about some of the age of what, the stuff we're dealing with right now, the Abrams, the Bradley fighting vehicles, the Paladin. I'm very thankful that the PIM program is there, and we're now going to advance that. But really, the Paladin technology, that was World War II. And we went through these things like we were supposed to have the upgraded capabilities and those programs that we get a big investment going in it, and then we slow it down. So we're dealing with a lot of old stuff, and it has to take its toll. So I guess just as a general response to what I've said in terms of that, well, let me throw one other thing too, and that's end strength. Right now we're talking about cutting back, what, 20, is that 20, I don't have that in front of me, but some 20,000 Marines and 49,000 soldiers. We've been wanting a dwell-to-bog ratio of 2 to 1, actually 3 to 1, and we're not even at 2 to 1 yet. We are in the, I guess, the Army, but not in the Marines. So combine all those things, it has to me, translate into an increase in risk. If we, and you mentioned maintenance, deferred maintenance is the first thing that goes, and you all know that when you're strapped. When we go over there and say we need more, body armor and these things, we come back and we get that. Then what suffers? It's maintenance and deferred maintenance. And you said it very well, Admiral Burke. You said you pay now or you pay a lot more later. So in light of that, what do any of you have any comments to make in terms of how this affects risk in terms of readiness?
Sir, if I may start off with...
Yes. Are the Marines still using retreads?
Well, not so much anymore, sir. Over the last few years, we've gotten better. We do have some challenges, and I will not paint a rosy picture. We have identified the fact that when the time comes, we'll need support of Congress to reset our equipment sets, and that's a requirement to the tune of about $5 billion, as Madam Chairman alluded to earlier. We have a reconstitution piece as well. We have learned that our legacy TEs in both Iraq and Afghanistan are not satisfactory. For example, an infantry company today has the same command and control capability that an infantry battalion had in the early 90s. Our radio assets are in our units. The requirements for those have increased, as well as ground tactical equipment. We need to, after this thing is over, after Afghanistan, we need to address those issues. That's part of the $5 billion in reconstitution that I mentioned earlier. Now, trying to keep our heads above water, because, as you know, Senator, about 50% of the equipment that we currently have in Afghanistan came right out of Iraq when we drew down in Iraq and we shipped that equipment over. That added to the stress of that equipment.
And to the personnel.
And to the personnel, most definitely. What we did bring back to our depots to reset that OIF equipment, and that continues, and that should be completed later this year. We do have continuing deliveries of equipment that were part of previous year contracts, and those deliveries continue on, which gives us some degree of relief. We're attempting to repair forward and refresh that equipment as best as we can. In fact, I'm asking Army Material Command to help us out in that endeavor and to mature their capability within Afghanistan so we can hit the refresh button on that equipment. We have for the Marine Corps, we have an equipment rotation plan that
I'm really trying to get to
yes, sir.
How all this affects risk. We know what risk is. You know what
sure.
risk is. And in terms of end strength, in terms of the age of the equipment, in terms of everything we've been talking about here, which is the percentage of GDP that is going to, do you have any comment to make about how that affects?
Yes, sir. If we don't,
there's a price we have to pay for all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. If we don't get help from Congress to reset our equipment when we pull out of Afghanistan, we are at risk to respond to contingency.
That's good. That's good. Any very brief comment about that, General Stevenson?
Sir, I agree. And you noted in my earlier statement that I think that we are in better shape today than we've been in a long time. I honestly believe that. It's not all rosy. We have issues. But we've been very well funded, and we've gotten our reset. Every dollar we've asked for in reset, we've gotten. Okay. And it's reset that's eliminating a lot of that risk.
Madam Chairman, if I might, I'd like to, one last question to General Reno. I don't want to take more of my time, but yeah, I comment. I don't agree with that, but I do feel that when you're looking at the deferred maintenance, there's another area also that it goes, and that is in spare parts. I have to say this, Madam Chairman, about General Reno. He possesses a character that is very rare in his side of the table and our side of the table both. It's called humility. He was the commander there at Ticker Air Force Base, and I think was probably one of the best commander we've ever had there. But let me just say this about this General Reno, because I think it's very important. When you are backed up on spare parts, and we're talking about the KC-135s and all the stuff that's going through there, I understand that up to 4,000 spare parts are always identified as being critical and on back order. Then I have a statement that's too long for me to read right now, but it comes from Ticker Air Force Base and addresses your choices. When you run out of a part and you've got it on jacks, you have a choice of either dropping it down, taking 5 or 6 days out of the work week, or cannibalizing and hoping that it gets there in time. Could you just make one comment about the critical nature of our spare parts inventory? And I think whatever you say about that particular operation is true in the rest of the operations also.
Thank you, Senator. The choices available when a part is not available are not good. None of them are good. It's either inefficient or delay or waiting. None of the choices are good if the part is not available. The parts have to have the requirement right, and that's a joint problem, a joint solution with DLA and the Air Force. We have to get the procurement right, and that is shortening the timeline on the acquisition lead time and the production lead time. And we have to get the delivery right so that there's perfect order fulfillment and so that the customer wait time is absolutely minimized. But whether at an ALC, a depot, or in the field, if the part's not available, there are no good choices.
Madam Chairman, the other question I'm going to ask him will be for the record, but it will address the somewhat arbitrary 50-50, and I'll ask a specific question about that on your ALC and as well as the rest of them. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Chambliss.